everybody wants to take a seat, we are going to get going. Welcome to the 2 o'clock panel on choosing your extraction technology. I am your host for the panel, Shango, and I'm also host of the Shaping Fire podcast. If you enjoy listening to interviews with top people in the cannabis game, I encourage you to grab a flyer next to the door on your way out and tune into my podcast where we listen to conversations like this each and every week. I would like to first introduce our guests today, starting directly to my right, Corey Chavez from Summit Extraction Systems. In the middle is Dr. George Stanchev from Comerg, and on the end, Dr. Sheldon Brodel Jr. from Althena Environmental Sciences. Welcome to all three of you. So these are merely highlights of each speaker's bio. I encourage you to Google them or approach them after the panel to find out more information. These gentlemen are so smart that I could go on for paragraphs and then we wouldn't have time for your questions. So starting at the far end, Sheldon Brodel Jr., PhD, is Chief Executive and Science Officer of Althena Environmental Services. Althena specializes in designing and building the tools needed to produce and purify biomolecules and then develop the applications for those biomolecules. Althena has a diverse product portfolio of over 200 products that are sold around the world for basic science and commercial uses. In the middle is George Stanchev, is founder and CEO of Comerg, an innovative extraction and purification systems company. He holds a PhD in electromagnetics, an MBA in product management, an MS in electrical engineering technology, and has numerous patents granted and pending. And directly to my right is Corey Chavez. He is CEO and co-founder of Summit Extraction Systems of Loveland, Colorado, a manufacturer of closed-loop butane extraction systems. Corey is also founder of Sensible Durango, a marijuana reform organization that coordinated with national activists to advocate for marijuana decriminalization and regulation. The way that the format's going to go for this panel is I've got a series of questions that I'm going to ask the gentlemen. We'll start at one end, then we'll start at the other end, and hopefully get a little bit of conversation going. And we'll save about 10 or 15 minutes at the end for your questions. So we're going to start with a question on the far end for Sheldon there. So Sheldon, I've worked with clients who have chosen their products for market first, and then they choose their extraction technology to suit the products that they've got in mind. But I've also worked with clients who first choose their preferred extraction method, and then they design the products on what those technologies can do. So where do you suggest that a new cannabis company looking to extract starts their decision-making process?
When I teach tech entrepreneurship at the university, the first thing I say is ask your customer what do they want. So I would argue that you want to start with the customer. What does the customer need? What is the customer trying to accomplish? What problem are you solving for the customer? Build your formulations based on that information, and then decide what the extraction or downstream purification process would be to meet those specifications.
George, what are your thoughts?
That's exactly what I would answer as well, because really your customer gives you the market, and the other way around, I would call that innovation, because that's probably going to innovate on cost, but pretty much if you want to be on the market tomorrow, you need to listen to the customer.
Yeah, so it's knowing the end products you'd like to create is a big component of choosing your extraction technology. Certain extraction methods are well suited to particular end products, and there's some extraction methods that are more versatile than others. So knowing the end products you'd like to create, whether that's a high-end concentrate, shatter, or wax, a distillate vaporizer pen, or an infused edible product, or a topical cream. Those are kind of the major categories: vaporizer pens, concentrates, edibles, and topical products. If there's one of those categories in particular that's appealing to your company, then we can work backwards from that to determine which extraction method is best suited. There's some extraction methods that are good generalists. They're well suited for all end products. And then there's other technologies that you can add to your initial extraction system to further purify the product for particular end products. So we can dive into that a little bit more as we go. But end product, knowing your end product is, of course, very important. What's the product you're going to bring to market? And if you don't know, then maybe a product with more, or an extraction method with more versatility is best suited to your enterprise.
Great. So this one's for you, Jordan. So there's a wide range of opinion regarding the use of hydrocarbons like butane and propane for extraction. You know, they give great taste and good returns by percent, but so few know how to remove the residual solvents in the industry, leading to failed lab tests and sometimes a dangerous product to the public. To what degree do you think that these technologies will continue to be top-tier options for commercial cannabis extractors?
Well, again, that refers a little bit to the previous question, what exactly we need to extract. There are different solvents and there are different constituents in the plant. Each solvent extracts a set of constituents in the plant. There are oil-soluble constituents in the plant, there are alcohol-soluble and water-soluble. If you use water, extract one part. If you use alcohol, another. And if you use oils, you extract oils. Usually similar, extract similar. And it is important feature of a solvent to get separated very easy, because the simplest solvent is water. You make a tea, that's an extract, but then you're removing the water, that's a very expensive process, because then you have to heat it and it's a long process to do that. So CO2 is a process that you can remove the solvent very easy, but then solubility of CO2, it's very tricky to set the point to dissolve, and it can dissolve with CO2 and water soluble and alcohol soluble and alcohol soluble, but you need to set up the impact point at a certain temperature and pressure in order to separate those, and actually you take more that you need. Again, coming back to the question, what exactly you need to extract. If you need to extract oils, there are non-polar solvents that can help you do that. If you want to extract supplements like alkaloids, then use alcohols. I would say there are general solvent technologies like butanes and alcohols and hexane and CO2 that can be always used because they're general. They're very well known, and you can make raw materials. You can use those raw materials for concentrates, for isolates and anything else, but the first step you can do general solvent, or we use solvent for production that gives you a single step process to extract exactly what you need.
So a couple of sort of parallel things to consider when you're choosing which solvent to work with. Solvent recovery is very important. So how expensive is it going to be to recover that solvent? How much energy you're going to be putting into the system, because the more difficult the solvent recovery is, the higher the higher the cost, the poorer the economics on your process. Another aspect is that in this particular industry, everyone is being very, I would say, eco-friendly. So a sustainable environment, right, which is really cool to watch. And it's kind of fun coming out of the pharmaceutical industry to watch how this industry is evolving with a very, very strong, eco-friendly, environmentally responsible mindset. So when you think in those terms, think about how is the solvent going to be recovered, and if it's not recovered, because some of it does leak out, what damage is it going to do to my employees, to myself, and what damage could it possibly do to the environment, and how can I minimize that? And then the other aspect too is then the economics. Some solvents are more economical to work with. So there's sort of this multifaceted, and I hate to use this term too, but it's coming down the pipe, regulation. So, you know, you've got OSHA regulations to start with, but sorry folks, but the FDA is going to be coming soon, and they're going to require certain controls in place that you can guarantee that you've removed that solvent from the system. So I think, you know, long term, thinking in terms of all these aspects, environmental responsibility, economics, and what regulatory issues am I going to be dealing with down the road a bit?
What are your thoughts, Corey?
Yeah, I think more of the nuance of your question was what concerns over residual solvent or residual contaminants and light hydrocarbon solvents like
Correct,
butane and
because
propane.
we're talking about products for customers, right?
Yeah.
And people are really concerned about PHO and VHO and the poor skills of a lot of lab folk in removing the residual solvent. So yeah, you're on.
Yeah, so I think that was much more of a concern several years ago. One of the great trends that our industry is creating is higher quality, better purity solvents are becoming more readily available. For light hydrocarbons and butane and propane, it means a 99.99, hopefully more nines, or as close to as 100 as possible, % purity. Solvent distributors, gas distributors are getting better at providing concentrate manufacturers with higher purity solvent, food grade, medical grade, pharmaceutical grade solvents. So that's a good trend. That's minimizing that concern, right? If the solvent doesn't contain a lot of contaminants, and it's close to its pure chemical form, it's close to just butane or just propane, the better. Also, filtration methods within closed-loop systems are improving. Filter media and process improvements, such as doing a butane or propane distillation prior to introducing the solvent into actual cannabis extraction, but just distilling the solvent itself prior to doing extraction runs, that removes a lot of traditional contaminants such as heavy metals and lubricants that may have ended up in the solvent. So there's a number of ways, filtration media, distillations prior to extraction runs, that minimize residual solvent and contaminants in the end product. And then also there's a number of great technologies after step one, which I call it step one, producing raw crude oil through BHO extraction. You can use white film systems that can totally remove residual solvent, and in the process also fractionate and separate the CBD compounds, THC compounds, separate the residual solvents. So you're isolating the compounds, and in the process also removing the solvent. So there's a number of techniques and trends and processes in the industry that are improving the quality and purity of BHO and PHO extracts.
Right on. So before we go on, I'm questioning whether or not Corey's mic is picking up. Are you in the back able to hear Corey? Yeah? Okay, great, cool. Just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, maybe a little louder.
Yeah, so I guess I will get a little closer to mic for next question.
Okay. All right. That's much.
All right, cool. Right.
Much more noticeable.
All right, great. So, so for the next question, let's see here. We're back to starting with George, please, if you would. So here's kind of a left field, because I know that a lot of people are probably expecting us to be talking about present existing high tech. But as far as entrepreneurs in the market and what people are asking for, let's talk about rosin press. So pressing flowers with a little bit of heat has come a long way from using the hair straightener to the new scaled up presses that output a flood of grams at one time, and yet they don't really feel ready for large scale commercial use yet. That said, the returns look pretty good and often on par with BHO, and the purity was without question because they don't use any solvent at all. Many believe that mechanical pressing is the future, but the technology has not been upscaled yet. So what are your thoughts on the current state of rosin-style extraction technology, and where do you see it heading?
Well, again, this is a question to the end product user. Do you need a concentrate or just oil from the plant? Because when you press it, you get a an oil. Usually in a plant, the oil is about 30% in its best to 15% at its lowest. And when you use a system like with a liquefied gas, then you're really putting a concentrate where the oil is 85% concentrated, 60 to 85%. And when you pull the concentrate, you also use certain selectivity in the solvent to be able to use that oil within like eatable products. You can come with certain dilution to be sure how many milligrams of this constituents you have into the food product. Well, resin, it's very simple organic method to do that. It usually works mostly on flowers, because if you have to process trim, that method is not going to be efficient for you. So usually, if you want to process flowers with rosin, then trim with concentrate with liquefied gas. That's probably the best to do.
What about you, Corey?
I think rosin press and other mechanical methods of extraction are great, but as you indicated, that they're difficult to reproduce at scale. So that's really the key point in choosing your technology is what is your processing volume? What's your throughput? How much raw material do you need to process? If it's small amounts, using a rosin press or another mechanical means of extraction, such as an ice water bath, like a bubble hash, like bubble bags, or a bubble hash washing machine, those are much simpler and much less expensive methods of extraction compared with solvent-based extraction. But solvent-based extraction is going to win in terms of efficiency and processing throughput every day. So I think rosin presses are really good for connoisseur concentrate markets. They typically get a shatter produced through a rosin press is typically a premium product in the dispensary. It's not very well known in just the general market. That's why I consider it more of a connoisseur product that people are kind of in the know about different extraction methods, are a little bit more in tune with the industry. Might request that or a bubble hash concentrate, but at the end of the day, it's not efficient method of production for edible oils or any other form of concentrate at scale, in a production setting.
Well, I would say that the one advantage that a press type or mechanical extraction system would have is it's not going to infuse the material with what we call an adventitious agent, a solvent that is not normally there. So in some markets it's going to have a benefit because you're not going to have exposed it to these extra agents. On the other hand, you get a very different product. So I think, again, as this gentleman said, it oftentimes goes back to who's your customer and what kind of product do they want. It's going to serve a place in the market. I think if somebody can figure out how to scale it, it's going to be very competitive. But I think that scaling issue, and that's probably just around the corner because, of course, they use similar types of technologies with other seed oils, and that's done at very, very large scale. So in this particular case, I think it's only a matter of time before some engineer figures it out.
And there does seem to be a lot of people thinking about that technology now, right? Because, like Corey mentioned, it is a connoisseur product, and it keeps it, the temperatures have gotten so low at this point that it does a pretty decent job with turfs and things like that. But yeah, unfortunately, it's probably just for connoisseur dabbing, and that's about it at this point.
For now, it may be. But it's also, I think, you have to be mindful of what are you going to do with it downstream, right? So what other processing steps you're going to go through as well.
Take a question.
Sure, well, we can take it as we go.
Well, it's actually not a question, but I think the rosin press, there's two factors in the extractor. There's like the selectability, using the solvents to select things, and then the efficiency of the extraction process. I'd say that rosin press is probably the least efficient process and has really no selectability. That's the big drawback, where if you're just trying to extract everything from the plant, it's okay, but it's not as selectable and efficient.
And I guess this goes back to the original round of questions, right? We were talking about what you're producing and for what kind of a customer. Because if you're looking to produce a product that is whole plant, right? So especially since we're having this discussion in a state that's medical, so we're thinking a lot about whole plant healing versus a technology that's going to pull out, singular cannabinoids to be used as isolates or something like that. Certainly, rosin is not going to be an appropriate technology. Yeah, so I agree with that. So all three of you gentlemen have expertise on a wide range of extraction technologies. But I also expect that you each probably have at least one solution that you feel to be, either the best or at least the one that you most recommend to cannabis entrepreneurs who are moving into extraction. And so my question is, what are you recommending to people right now who are going into business as your preferred solution? So you want to start, Sheldon? Yeah.
Okay, so our group works on the downstream side, so we actually don't have a preferred method.
For people like me that don't know what downstream side means, what does that mean?
Sure. So the downstream side. So with the way we view the materials that you're working with, there's a crude oil extract has hundreds of compounds in it. That's what we refer to extraction as an upstream. So even upstream from that is the plant itself. You grow the plant under certain conditions. The plant makes a certain combination of the different phytochemicals that have their various activities. The next step is to extract those chemicals out into what's called a crude material, which is what most folks are working with right now. And then our idea is that you go one step further now and you start separating all of those components of the plant into their individual chemical constituents and then reconstitute things. And so that after the extract is what we refer to as the downstream purification. So for those of us that work more on the downstream side where we're trying to separate everything, we've developed systems that are really agnostic with regard to how you extract it. Okay, so our systems can handle any type of material coming off the extractions. And so intentionally, we're not worried too much about whether it's using CO2 or Freon or butane or any of the other types of solvents because our system is designed to be able to separate all that stuff out.
I see. So your starting point is not the flour or trim. Your starting point is the oil, and that's where you're focusing about what to do with it that point forward.
That's right. That's right.
Well, our company designs different extraction systems, hexane, butane, alcohol, and steam water systems. But we're here talking about a solvent called Freon that is the most efficient solvent to extract oils, CBD, THC, and terpenes. And selectivity of Freon is best for this plant because based on that selectivity, we measured over 95% efficiency of extraction, which is very unique.
Yeah.
Very unique. You don't need, literally, you don't need any post-processing after you have the extract. If we're talking about the full plant extract, if we're not interested in full plant extract and we want to do a concentrate or isolate, we run this this extract through a system like HPLC, and we get 99.9% pure CBD, THC, and we separate the terpenes in another bucket. So in our case, using Freon, it's advantage because first of its boiling point, minus 30 degrees C, that means that in at room temperature it's well in gaseous phase, so no residual in the plant theoretically, and you can, like compared to alcohol, 60 degrees the boiling point, compared to butane is about 0, and only CO2 is kind of competitor to that because it's a gas. On the safe side, Freon is not flammable, not toxic. By OSHA data, 57% concentration in environment, it's safe for over 4 hours, while 8% of CO2 in the environment can make you brain dead in 4 minutes, and about 6% of butane in the environment is flammable. So you have to have certain precautions when you work with some other extraction method. One with us is like dealing with a refrigerator. So it's one of the safest and fastest methods to do extraction specifically for CBD and THC oils.
So I was reading about this technology in preparation for this, and the return numbers were pretty astonishing. You know, how long has this technology been around? Because, you know, I actually got on the phone and called up some of my extraction friends. I mean, have you heard about this purified technology? And it's using Freon, and they're like, Freon? And so, and I've read some of the interviews that you've done on it. How long has this technology existed?
So Pure5 is our trade name. So Pure5 is known in the last year since we entered the cannabis field. But before that, for 12 years, we were doing aromatics and fragrance and flavor market, extraction of rose and lavender oils of over 150 different food-grade ingredients. It's been known for a long time into the pharmaceutical industry. It's approved by FDA since 2001 and in Europe since 1994 for flavor and fragrance salt. So it's been around for over 2 decades.
So it's been proven in other industries, but its arrival in cannabis is the part that's more new, not necessarily the technology itself.
Yes, because cannabis is a new industry, and of course, new industry starts with general solvents. Whatever is out there, and then when we talk about production, about large scale, about volume, I certainly see a lot of advantages using Freon.
Are the machines available commercially yet for cannabis, or are you still enough in startup mode that you're still learning how to produce them for specifically cannabis clients?
Yes, they're available. Our small machine extracts about 20 pounds a day, and our large machine extracts about 600 pounds a day. So we have large scale extraction.
Right, cool. Thank you. I wanted to spend a little more time on this because it's a technology that I had not heard of, and I'm not sure if all of you had either. So same question to you, Corey. So what are you recommending to people now, and why?
Yeah, well, in full disclosure, some of the extraction systems, where I work is a manufacturer of closed-loop butane extraction systems. So the reason we decided to build our business around using butane and other light hydrocarbons, such as propane, is simply for efficiency and versatility. The end products that you can create with light hydrocarbon extract span the full spectrum from bulk edible oils, highly purified oils for vaporizer cartridges, oils for topical creams, and then unique to butane, raw concentrates such as shatter. It's difficult to reverse engineer concentrates like that using other methods. So butane offers great versatility in terms of the end products you can create. Our equipment, we focus on producing bulk cannabis oils that can be further refined to whichever particular type of end product our customers are making. So the versatility is really important. Because we operate at relatively low pressures, especially compared to supercritical CO2, the raw material costs of the components of the extractor are much less. So upfront equipment cost is very attractive for butane extraction systems. And then cycle time is very important. How long it takes to produce your oils in a given amount of time. So with butane extractions as compared to CO2 or other methods are very fast. So there's a number of advantages, and butane as a solvent for cannabis is well established in our industry, and concentrates that are produced via butane extracts, especially because of its ability to preserve terpene profiles, the flavor and aromatics of the plant. For that reason, butane extracts have won more High Times Cannabis Cup awards and more concentrate awards than any other solvent-based method.
And that's the rub, isn't it, right? Because butane, butane dab oil keeps the terps on point and it tastes fantastic. But you really need to know who your processor is and that they're getting rid of the residual solvents. It's amazing how many cups you'll go to and you see the oil, it's got like great color, and the judges will taste it or not, depending on what order they do things. But then the testing comes back, and they've all blown their numbers on residual solvents. And you know that the extractor believed that it was great because they spent the $1,000 to enter, and then all of the samples as well. But while they had the extraction done, they didn't know how to clean it up afterwards.
Well, I'll say that in regulated environments where extraction-based or solvent-based extraction is regulated, the residual solvent amount, usually indicated in terms of ppm parts per million, is established and regulated. And before you're able to take a solvent-based extract to the market, you have to have a batch of that tested. So the actual amount, parts per million, varies state to state. I think that will become more standardized over time, but in regulated markets, you can't release extracts or edibles or any solvent, any oils that were derived from solvent-based extraction into the market that don't meet those, safe to consume thresholds. So the cups, they're a little more lax in terms of who can enter, who can submit concentrates to that. So you might find some higher residual solvents in those type of settings than an actual dispenser, medical marijuana or recreational dispensary.
Yeah, very true. So this next question is going to go in a totally different direction, but considering we're speaking to cannabis entrepreneurs who are looking to buy extraction equipment and set up labs, you've all worked in extraction labs to some degree or another and had assistants helping you along the way, most likely. So for those in the room who would be taking your advice to the bank when they use it to build their extraction companies, what attributes should they look for in extraction lab staff? There are a lot of variety of the kinds of people that can be hired for the lab. What would you recommend to be some attributes that these business owners look for in lab extraction staff? And we'll start with you, Sheldon.
All right, so in staffing, you definitely want to bring in, if you're not expert yourself in the chemistry behind these systems, I would definitely look for an experienced chemist or biochemist who has done these types of extractions. Maybe not necessarily on cannabis, but certainly maybe in the flavor and fragrance markets, where a lot of these folks will have expertise in doing extractions, handling the equipment, doing the chemistry that's required, and understanding how the process can vary and those sorts of things. So definitely someone with a technical background. Your lead person should have at least, I would say, 5 years or more of experience would be my recommendation. And then the staff that supports that person could be anywhere from someone with an associate's degree on up, but trainable. They're going to have to learn the chemistry and the process, and these systems do run under pressure of some degree. And there's a little bit of, I don't know, I don't like pressurized systems, so yeah, you want to make sure that they understand the rules behind the chemistry and the biochemistry of operating these systems.
What would you have, George?
Well, that is certainly one thing that we design our systems around, so you don't need any expertise to run a machine. Literally, you need to load it, push a button, and collect extract within 2 to 3 hours. Maybe the best person to operate our machine is the refrigeration technician because knows what's going on inside. But selectivity of Freon is so specific, and you have so much consistency every time that you don't need to even think about that temperature, what happened with the solvent, or with because everything happened at room temperature. We don't damage the plant by any way, and there is nothing really that you can do to change.
Makes it sound very plug and play. Just roll
One
it
person
in.
can run 10 machines
Yeah.
and still have time.
I'll agree with Dr. Tenship that I don't think there's a high educational requirement for a lot of the latest systems that are coming on the market. The simplicity in which to operate the equipment is improving. A lot of systems are adding semi-automated or automated capabilities. So I don't think unless you're producing a very highly formulated, very refined product that you need to go as far as to have a chemist or a biochemist on staff. There's a lot of consultants that can help you kind of establish your SOPs, your standard operating procedures to produce the perfect extract for your product. But you don't necessarily have to increase your payroll having degreed production workers.
So,
Another shot.
well, we have a little controversy here, right? Because I disagree with them. I'm an investor too, okay? I want to see an experienced person on staff before I'm putting money into your company. So that's another side. These gentlemen are correct. Their instruments are plug and play. Ours is very easy to use as well. So a lot of these instruments, by design, are intended to be easy to use. And maybe you can get away with using an inexperienced person. I would feel more comfortable with an experienced person. You also have to be mindful of how your investors are going to view it, because that's another dynamic that comes into this. If you're going to try to raise $500,000 and to operate some of these instruments, your investors are going to want to see that either you have the expertise or somebody on staff does. At least that's my perspective as an investor. I would want that.
An extraction consultant that I work with regularly, he says, your trained staff is not necessarily there for the everyday, because you can just grab an active learner and they'll be able to run your lab on an everyday. It's on your worst day that you need to have somebody who's trained, and I think that there's a lot of insight in
when
that.
things go badly wrong, and they will. I've been in this the biotech industry long enough to know that things go awry very quickly. You want to have an expert around to solve that.
Right on. So we've got time enough just for a couple questions.
I just wanted to say, when you have an inspector come into your facility, you probably want them talking to somebody knowledgeable.
That's a good point. Yeah.
That's true. Another question?
That's something to add. About 8 years ago, when I sold the first butane extractor to the industry,
Could you speak up a little bit, sir? So we can
the guys that were doing the extractions didn't have a lot of experience in the market, didn't have a lot of education in what they were looking for. So full spectrum extractions were kind of what they were going at, maybe oil extractions, but they didn't know how to select. Now you're in a highly selective industry where they're trying to select and target things in the plant. Now you need an extractor that can be more selective. But the way that we're going to go is the way that he's going, where we're just going to start extracting everything from the plant, letting these post-operation processes take form. And so I think that he's going to fall right into place with where we're going to go. And when you go upscale large production, you're not going to be trying to leave anything in the plant. You gotta
really
get it all
take
out.
everything at once, and then after the fact, figure out what you want to slice out.
But right now you need one that can do everything, and then later you need to be able to do, something else.
Yeah, I like to break it into
Stage.
stage one extraction, just pulling out all your bulk cannabis oil, and that's really what a lot of closed-loop extraction systems do.
But you need a co-solvent to do that. You need to be able to add other solvents to the mixture and target all the things that are in the plant. You can't do it with just one solvent. Even ethanol and CO2, as broad as they are, they're not highly selective at one particular thing.
Yeah, that's true. And then, so that's kind of stage one, and then stage two is when you get into chromatography or fractional distillation, and you're really further separating those compounds if you have a product that requires that sort of degree of separation.
So we've got time for one more question. Do we have one more out there?
Is Freon Are you mixing other co-solvents with your Freon and having good results?
We tried different co-solvents. The bigger issue when we do all the co-solvents together is the boiling point. If you have to separate them, knowing that -30, like we tried different Freons, over 10 different Freons. Some of them are mixtures, but they all have like a different boiling point. It comes to the same point when you maintain a refrigerator. You have to refill it. You cannot. You have to drain everything and fill it brand new, then refilling it. Same thing with co-solvents happens in the extraction system. If you have to maintain same quality of the extraction output, you have to maintain that proportion between the co-solvents the same. We do have, by the way, exactly what you said, co-solvent ethanol, but we use it after. Like we run for 20 minutes Freon and then run ethanol, so we get all soluble and all the more supplement side.
Because you're moving, you have to do this isolation process, right? If you had a volume of solvent that you can pass through at one pass, you can mix them together uniformly, right?
That's correct.
Great. So before we wrap up, I just want to plug the next panel that's going to be starting here at 3 o'clock, which is going to be on working together in marketing, co-branding to win. So I encourage you to be here for that. Let's thank our panelists for today, Dr. Sheldon Brolo, Dr. Stanchev, and Corey Chagas. Thank you very much.